Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with All Angles. Now, voting in Zimbabwe has been extended in some provinces after delays caused rigging accusations. In parts of Harare, an opposition stronghold, only 25% of polling stations opened on time due to ballot paper shortages. The Zimbabwean government attributed the problem to litigation prior to the elections. Opposition parties accused ZANU-PF of voter suppression. Africa Analyst Joseph Ochieno joins us now live to give us more information. Joseph, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. I have to say, quite disappointing after having free and fair or democratic elections for so long. Africa, not just Zimbabwe, but the entire continent is just not getting the ballot paper and electoral commission normal, just the usual day-to-day rules failing when it comes to that.
It's sexual. I just cannot understand why, as a continent, in fact, almost in entirety as a continent, perhaps 95, 98% of the continent where elections do take place, nothing happens without a hitch. And many of these hitches are as commonsensical as merely ballot papers and ballot boxes. And it's extraordinary that, for instance, election material should delay arriving in Harare, arriving in Johannesburg, arriving in Kampala. No, there is something happening on this continent, and perhaps I hope that with the BRICS taking place and concluding in South Africa rather successfully, maybe our leaders ought to be waking up and waking up rather fast. When we have these conversations, I look back as I was reflecting that perhaps I missed President Mbeki, that African, I am an African, as I would say, and as it said, that perhaps we need big African leaders like that to begin banging tables on behalf of their colleagues to ensure that we begin to push our resources much more meaningfully into areas where and which are absolutely important. Electoral processes are part of the democratic systems that are absolutely important. The legitimacy question, as basic as saying that, look, materials did not arrive in time. Of course, the opposition will begin to cry foul, even if actually you had the upper hand, and that seems to be the case in Zimbabwe. Of course, we know in Zimbabwe's case, to their relative credit, that it's a country that has been bungled by deliberate Western sanctions, something that I've been very critical about in the last several decades or so, notwithstanding the facts of the political crisis that was there then between MDC and the then governing ZANU-PF as a political party. Part of the conversation we were having with the guest earlier there gives me a reflection of
We can't seem to get Joseph Ochieno correctly there on the line, and it was actually going, the conversation, and I wanted to ask him about this excuse that the Zimbabwean government has now given about voting day having to be extended because they just can't get the logistics right, basic logistics right in Zimbabwe, and that's, of course, the Electoral Commission there having to extend voting to today because they couldn't close at 7 o'clock yesterday because some regions didn't even get ballot papers at all yesterday. And the government saying that it's blaming court cases, some of the protests that have happened prior to elections, etc., and some of the events that preceded it. Court cases and protests, that's something that you expect when it's an election season, right? It's going to happen here in South Africa. So I just wondered what Joseph thought about that reasoning that was given by the government of Zimbabwe, and particularly the Electoral Commission that side.